Hi, Mr. Ratajski. Your first name, I think, is Jarek or Jarek, right?
Oh, so you spelled it the second time exactly as I spell it, Jarek.
Yeah.
That's
and
in
is this
Polish.
and is the English? Is there an English equivalent of that?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think so.
Because I know a guy. His name was Jared. So, yeah, like your name with the D in the end.
Yes, but I think there is absolutely no connection. That's accidental between, because this Jarek is a short name from something, from the official name, which is Yaroslav, which is a Slavian name, and I bet you know some other Yaroslavs.
Yeah, I know a lot of Yaroslavs. Okay, now I have it. The most important question, of course, of today is, what was your first computer and how you started programming?
Oh, that's a good one. My first computer, I still remember, that was a Commodore 64. That was just the beginning of 90s, because I was born in a communist Poland, so I didn't have access to computers we didn't have access to computers for a long time, but that was a machine that was basically bought by my parents right after we get access to stuff from West. Mm-hmm. And I started programming almost immediately. I still remember this moment where my colleague heard that my parents are going to buy this Commodore, and he went to the library to get a book about programming. By the time my parents came with the computer, we already know a little bit what to do with that.
Hey, cool. And how you got it? From where you got it?
So that was like a gift from my parents, but I was living at that time in a small city in town called Gubin at the western border of Poland, and basically they went to Germany. That I think still it was East Germany, but already a little bit open to the world, and there was a computer market there, and they just bought it
okay.
Computer.
Oh, very good. So then you already had, the manual, and you immediately started programming. So the question to me, which is the most interesting question, is why you were excited about the computer, and why you were excited and your colleague about programming. So I mean, right now everyone can have computer, but no one would like to program the computer. So what was the difference back then? Why you were so excited about computers?
No, so I was like starving. I was like hungry for computers, because I was like reading about them from popular books and watching them in TV, but they were like mysterious machines. Really, in my life till when I was like 13, I touched computer once, and it was just touched, and that was like Spectrum machine, and it was so like mysterious things. And of course I touched few other video games, but even that, that was very brief moments. So, and I was spending actually hours trying to find out how those machines can work. And I didn't even have access to anything. Like there was no internet. Library was like full of books which were covering other topics, and closest to computer were books about electronics. And reading those books about electronics at my age, I was like trying to figure out how this thing can even work, having absolutely no real description of anything. And so that was like, I was just hungry. You can't even imagine, or maybe you can, how much it was like for me to get a computer to really touch and to see it's my own, I can program it. So really in the moment it came, I already knew a few things. How can I start and do this, Hello World or something like that.
And which books were it, or which movies it inspired you the most?
Actually, I can absolutely not even a movie. I don't remember any movie that inspired me. That time in Poland we have like, how to call that, like television show, which was like scientific. I don't know. It's because at the moment I don't really watch those, but like regular 1 hour bar led by two hosts that they were describing amazing stuff about science, and quite regularly they were showing computers and what can you do with them. That was basically the most inspiring. The program was called Sonda, whatever,
Okay.
like probe, and that's quite still known in Poland. That was one of these old style, really good programs about popular science.
Okay. So this is really interesting because I had similar experience. So for me, where I had the ZX Spectrum actually, and for me was a magical machine from different world. And this is like everything was boring because it was predictable, and the only thing I knew which was not predictable and is like sky open was the machine, the computer, and I was inspired. I really like science fiction movies, all of them. So actually, for me, science fiction was like crazy stuff. So whatever was no superficial or whatever, it was like for me the most important thing. And for unknown reasons, I just wanted associated a computer with it. And this was not that that different. I mean, it was exactly that. So you could actually do whatever you liked with them. And the only thing at the beginning. What I didn't like about them is something unreal. You spend time typing something in and you see output on the screen, but there is nothing to touch. But this feeling, went away. I would say a few years later. But this was my first was ZX Spectrum, but I really wanted to have the Commodore one. And the only thing is my manual was in French. And I had no book before, so I had to understand, without any knowledge about French, typing in, the basic commands and define, basic a bit.
Yeah, actually, that started. I tell you, this is even more similar because my first Commodore was bought in Germany and had a German Commodore handbook. I don't really remember this, but the official book. It was all in German. I didn't know any German at that time. I was just trying to decode that.
Yeah, German would be perfect for me, but French, no chance. And the cool story is, you imagine, if you know BASIC, there is a BASIC command called rem.
Yeah.
And this is just like java.comment, right? There is nothing behind.
Yeah.
And
we're trying to...
And what I thought at the beginning, that what you are doing is like ASCII art, you have to program REMs on the screen and just, the text will appear. And I couldn't get, how to change the text. So my idea about the computer is like more like a slideshow. You're writing lots of RAM, so you will see the output on the screen like a system out print line. And I just type a lots of RAM and nothing happens. It's like, what the hell is going on? I type half an hour RAM, so nothing is. What is RAM? And there was a bent REM. It's like, what RAM? This was remark, like, the comment. So this was my first nonsensical programming. So, yeah.
So in my case, that was also masters, but I had a little bit better start because really before I get the hand on the computer, my colleague had like unofficial access to the library of for adults, and there were like 3 books there about programming. Only one, really.
Adults book. Yeah,
adults. Okay, it's like that's not about really. I doubt there was really a single one book not for kids there, but just it was like a different library, and for some reason we didn't have normally access there. But nevertheless, there was a book about BASIC. And it was about Atari Basic. And if you know the differences between dialects, you know that on the third program already couldn't work on Commodore because of differences in the strings. At that time, I had no clue.
Yeah.
So basically, I was like, this was a great disappointment that after the first something like Hello World, at that time, I think we didn't really start with Hello World. There was something else, but I don't really remember.
Yeah, exactly. But and didn't even know what Hello World means. So a way later, someone talked me about write Hello World. It's like, why Hello World? What the hell is Hello World? Why I should write Hello World? So there was no concept of Hello World. This is what I exactly remember. Because
there was like...
Yeah.
It was like something, I'm Commodore, I don't know, but nevertheless, I'm Atari, whatever.
Yeah.
The point is that, so I had this book about Atari Basic, but it helped me to understand the concept of Basic, but basically then I had this German handbook for Commodore, and I had to like compose both to get something working, but it went really quickly. It was like, I do remember my, like, let's say first 13 hours with computer where like was gradually learning, and the mystery was going away to the moment, like 2 days later, I get access to the first game like, computer game I can load from the tape. And you know what? The biggest expectation was to see the code of the game.
Okay.
And I listed, and there was only a single line of BASIC there, like sys 2064. And that was like, no, that was like a cool game. It doesn't matter the name, but how can it be written in one line of BASIC? Because I already tried to write games, in my like first hours. I was imagining how big games I would write, but I was like, let's say it was disappointing. I was able to write something, but nothing even close. And then they present me like one line of code, like something cryptic. What the hell is sys? I didn't. That was like system call in assembly, and the whole game was written in assembly. But at that moment, I had basically no clue about assembly. I thought everything is in BASIC. And I was even more surprised when I typed this sys something and the game popped up. So then I had like this moment, oh my God, so I just have to invent different numbers and different games will pop up, because accidentally other game that I loaded had sys 2072. But after you load that, it actually worked if you type it from the command line, because it was like, but if you reset the computer, magically this doesn't work anymore. Yeah. So I really spent a couple of days trying to figure it out until I get the concept. I think it was even in the book that there is assembly behind. And then there was like a next starvation. I need to know assembly, because at that time I already seen that writing anything more funny in BASIC is impossible because it's too slow.
Yeah. In my case, I never got into assembly because, in my French book, there was no assembly. And by the way, I never heard about the sys command in my BASIC days. But what I had similar experience with pick and pokes. So in the book, pick and pokes were mentioned, and I had no idea what they are doing, and tried to find out for loops, and funky things happened. Like color change and sound start playing, computer crash, and I had no idea why. And from the French, text, it was no way to find out what pick and pokes were doing. I think I spent, 3 years investigating what the hell pick and pokes are about. And no one knew, actually. I was the only computer guy.
Had similar experience. And by the way, I was also doing those experiments. I was trying to guess. But let's say after like 2-3 months of having this, like really struggling, trying to observe and find out what's going on. Sometimes I was able. Actually, this German manual was not that bad. That was really awesome. At this moment, they never have these manuals anymore, because who would even buy computer for programming? But nevertheless, there was a lot there, but with just cryptic German names. But I was able to figure out a lot of that. And after 3 months, I got the real good book for assembly, for Commodore, for not only assembly, but as well for the Commodore, graphic programming, audio programming, which was like extending everything, and this whole world opened for me.
So what was your first, basic program? A game?
Oh, I can't even tell you, but don't. I hope my sister will never hear this. It was like, I remember I was like writing line 10, print, and then my sister name, and then it's stupid.
Okay.
Really, like that. Then line 20. Okay, 20 is more like a second line in BASIC. Print, just empty line, and then 30, go to 10.
Yeah.
So it would like fill the screen with, sister name is stupid. And that was like, wow. And that basically after that, I got a ban for a computer from my parents for like hour or something, but nevertheless, I was so successful.
Yeah, but you could tell the parents is like, AI, something going on. It's just what the computer wrote, and the computer is always right, That
was the point of it, but no one understood the joke.
Yeah, so there were already 2 design patterns back then, because what I did, I numbered the lines not 10, 20, 30. You could do 1, 2, 3, 4. But the problem was you couldn't write anything between them.
Yeah.
So this was your first design pattern, right? And the second one, I never used go to. I always used go sub. And I was proud about that, because, you went to a line and jumped back. So cool.
Yeah.
And then were the other programs with BASIC you wrote reasonable programs, or you switched to assembly then?
No, I still remember like my second program. The next day I was writing something like I wanted for years to have it, like for encoding with, simple substitutions, like typical crypting with substitutions of messages, like, letter A would be C or something like that, rot. But that wasn't really a rot. It was some other substitution alphabet I had. And I finally had this program that I could encrypt messages to my colleague, and he would be able to decrypt it back. Of course, very, very secure method, but it was like, we were playing for years, designing cryptographic things, of course, all that childish, but nevertheless, it was fun. And then I had computer to do that for me. That I really remember that was like a second program. Yeah, cool. And then there were like, I even remember like the few days later, it was actually after decrypting something from Commodore 64, how to do a music. So I was able to encode some music, and to that music I had to put something on screen. So I did actually one of the few video games I've seen, like a snake, that today it would be called a snake. At that time it was like something really, I was even playing that for a few moments and never get the idea this is a snake because everything was in a text, even on that video game. And I basically copied the idea and did the same thing in Commodore 64. This is, by the way, very interesting because interesting recently, because one of the, let's say, people I know from the net who is a Java developer for, 5 years or something, said that actually, if he would be given a task to write a snake, he wouldn't even know where to start. He can do, enterprise programs, market, whatever, but to write a game like a snake is just where even to start. And at that time, after 3 days of learning, basically struggling, it wasn't really even that complicated with just pokes, picks, and go to. It was actually very easy.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in enterprise, it would be even impossible to write, snakes with enterprise because just backend. And the front end would be JavaScript. And in JavaScript would be, I would say, similar. You would use Canvas and you will draw something on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So in fact, I recently, in order to show that I did this snake in JavaScript to see if it's more complex. So I must say that actually in JavaScript, snake was easier than in BASIC. But that was already involving a lot of concepts, like not even a canvas, but nevertheless, you have to know HTML, CSS a little bit. Okay, with canvas that would be a different, but then event handling, and so the code was short, but the concepts that we use now are, if I was like 13, I wouldn't understand them.
Yeah, so you used for the snake on JavaScript, you used SVG or Canvas or DOM?
DOM.
Okay. So then it's even easier, but with Canvas would it be faster?
Might be, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. So since then you're just building snakes on different platforms?
Not really, but I have something. Not really, but I have a similar thing that when I'm trying to evaluate something that has a user interface, or sometimes doesn't even have to, I'm writing Pong game, more or less same old type of game, and I'm just trying to see how would be to write a Pong in Haskell. How would that be in write a Pong in something like even a style of Java or whatever?
That is actually a good approach, but assuming that there is a user interface, right?
Yes and no. So for a few things, for instance, with Haskell, I only wrote backend for Pong. And the front end, I have even one ready front end, which communicates with REST with a backend, and basically does it. So I have one client, and right now I'm using to evaluate, and I just replace backends, which are basically REST.
Okay, that's cool. So you wrote the snake, and what was your then fast pace your career to until first line of Java? So you started with the Pong in BASIC, and then what you did with the C64, or what was your
Actually, so Commodore 64, I would say that was like 2-3 years. A story where I basically was trying to get a maximum from this machine, but I never get to the level of really doing cool stuff like
How old were you? How old were you back then?
like I was like for 13, 15, 16,
Okay.
let's say.
Yeah, cool.
Something more like I started my like how is that secondary school, like Liceum in Poland called. Nevertheless, I still started with Commodore. And then I realized my colleagues from a bigger city, but at that time, some of them have better machines, like IBM PC, 80 at that time mostly, or
Yes.
XT even, all the Amiga. And Amiga was something I was like totally amazed of. And then I basically
500?
convinced me. The 500, yes, and then I got this Amiga 500, and that was like again a completely new world, new possibilities. And I basically at that time I was always going into assembly, and assembly for this Motorola 68K was really cool. So that compared to Commodore and even later to the IBM PC, like the first one assemblies, that was like a very productive one. So I was going, reading the books and writing programs. Actually, I was touching a lot. I wasn't doing games, and I wasn't doing this, what people were doing, like going into hardware of Amiga directly. I was mostly amazed with the operating system, so I was doing system calls, but all of that from assembly, basically. And then slowly I realized my assembly, I write more and more macros to my assembly to make my stuff easier. And then someone told me that actually I'm reinventing a C, only the hard way. So I switched to C in one day. That was like a smooth change, because like C looks from one perspective like a very sophisticated macro assembly. So that was like this move. And then I started one day, let's say university, and the university I still had Amiga, but let's say very, very expanded. I do remember the moment that I had 5 megabytes of RAM at the time, where people with IBM PCs had 1 megabyte or something like that. And I was able to do like amazing stuff on this Amiga. Nevertheless, the world of PCs was expanding. But at that time, basically at university, I learned a little bit about C++, and I was extremely, how to say that, disgusted by object-oriented programming. How slow should that be, and etc. But that was like one moment when I bought it, and I was like for a few years a C++ programmer. Basically, whole my university, I was like doing C++ and more complex stuff.
So you got the Amiga 500. That was your next computer, right?
Yeah, that was like beginning actually at the secondary school, and then I spent a few years with that. Really.
Okay. So hacking assembly and then switching to C, right?
To C and to C++, yeah. Really like that.
And which university you were in? Which city was it?
That was Wrocław, so Technical University of Wrocław. So that's.
Okay. I'm asking because I was a couple of times in Gdańsk, and once in Poznań, and in Warsaw as well, Warszawa, and yeah, this was my university tour in Poland, I think. In Krakow, I am not sure. I was just at conference. Okay, perfect. So you got the 500, and then you stick with the 500?
Yes, yes, but I still have my Amiga 500, but it's nothing like the standard Amiga 500 you got from the shop. I really have even today, I have like 5 megabytes of RAM. I can even extend it to 9. And I have hard disk there and all that stuff. So it's like that was expanded machine.
Okay. And so you did C++, and what was the most interesting program you wrote in these days, regardless was C, C++ or assembly? So what you did then? Still games, or what was your mission?
I was mostly trying to build mission, and sometimes to build games, and sometimes programs for fun. I wouldn't call them real demos because I wasn't that advanced, and I even wasn't that much into going into hardware as for the operating system. But I'm mostly proud of my C++ programs I've finally written for IBM PC when I switched to PC. But that was like that was like one day I finally like started, bought this PC, and I started with PC, and that was after the Windows 95 actually. So I had already Windows, and I could really do more or less the same stuff. I had fun with Amiga, because with operating system, I was really disappointed how the Windows API looks like, but nevertheless, the machines were faster at that time finally. And I'm really proud about doing, let's say, network programs. So mostly like one thing I did during my studies, which allowed me to finish a couple of actually courses. So like, you write one program and it is used in many places to show, and you get a good note for that. And it was like simulation of the stock market, where people were having on some machines like clients to like, let's say, buy virtual actions or whatever. And then there was like a stock market machine you were connecting to, which was giving the prices for offers, etc. So that was like, and for me, that was like a school how to write something bigger with Windows, with network programming, server client, and all that stuff. Actually, it took me some time. It wasn't really that, but that program really, I really still remember I was like doing by learning, as I was learning the networks. So I get this idea, I will write something like that, and so on.
Okay, cool. Which was it TCP/IP already, or use something proprietary?
Yeah. So basically that was TCP/IP. I was like learning low level how to do that, and at that time even that was quite complex. For instance, on quite complex technically, because right now every machine supports TCP/IP. At that time, I do remember like Windows 95 machines, you had to download a special program, Trumpet Winsock.
Exactly.
To let it do TCP/IP. So there were like a lot of such stupid problems, but it still was possible.
Cool. And which CPU was it, your first PC? Was it 8086 or was it 286? Remember?
So my first CPU, actually, that was Pentium. That was, as I said, that was an era of Windows something. Yeah. So that was Pentium 200 megahertz, something like that.
Okay. My first PC was 8086, and then the first Pentium was, I think, the Pentium was 5 something, right? And it was 75. Could it be 75 megahertz? Could, right?
Yeah. They were like that.
Yeah. So I was the first was 75, but then I started. There were not only Intel Pentiums. There were a lot of competition. I remember. So I had AMDs, and one which I forgot was like with smaller CPU cycles, but was supposed to be faster. It's no more. It does not exist anymore with a funky name. I forgot. It was not AMD and was not Intel, but it was
Cyrix.
Yes, exactly, something like this. And interesting. So and then you did C++. You were object-oriented fanboy, and then
yes, I was.
And then how you bumped into Java?
Oh, that was actually so. I was hearing about Java a lot, and I even took university course about Java, but that was like course, and I was only mostly having fun with that. I never expected anyone would use that, on production for doing anything real. I was hearing about, I was even doing some Java applets. I was trying to hack Java, for instance. I still remember like my failure that I wanted to do, the Windows. If you write them with, if you display a window with on the screen with Windows, you have an API to make it like partially transparent, or even window to be like circle. So really that doesn't really cover the all rectangular, but it can cover any area. There is a special API in Windows for doing that. Programs don't do that anymore, but they were like, I don't know, 10 years or 20 years ago. A lot of people were doing that just for fun. Mm-hmm. And I was like disappointed. I can't do that in Java because there is no access to this low level stuff. But nevertheless, I was trying. I really remember the moment I got access to something called Forte for Java. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course. Forte for J.
Forte for J. It was like the, let's say, commercial NetBeans. At that time, I never heard about NetBeans, but it was like my first, let's say, good experiences with Swing programming. And actually, I was I do remember the moment when I decided to write something funny with that, because I realized there is one thing about Java that I don't have with other stuff. The compiler, the tools, and all of that is for free and I can use it without paying for that. So that was like a big pain for C++, where the most amazing, let's say, compilers for me and IDEs were at that time costing incredible amount of money. For instance, I was a big fan of Borland C++, but as a student, okay, let's say, I could only had at that time, like, let's say, in Poland, there were a problem with law, with how to call it, this actually legal stuff about owning a program and selling. That was all not really solved, but we knew that we cannot do anything commercial with Borland C++, even though we see this program is cool. And then with a group of colleagues, we decided, I will do something with Java because at least we can publish it and we can have something legally working. So that was really something that we did one funny program with that. And I still remember that was my first big project with Java. That was remote laboratory. It was for university so that the students were able, using applets, to connect to the real physical laboratory, which had a server, and connect electrical, actually, don't call it electronics. That was electrical devices to perform some measurements and basically do their lab work at home, from home. But really connecting to the, actually, would you believe that we were using Corba there from Java?
Yeah, of course. I did similar thing, but for commercial. There was a huge company who wanted, to control remote plants from Germany using, back then, of course, Corba. So we used VisiBroker and Orbix. I remember there are different commercial Corba and JackOrb. There are different Corba implementations. It was also one of my first Corba project, but it was distributed one. One question just. You never worked with Linux back then? Because I started actually, I saw briefly Windows 95, and I say, this is actually crap. So I stick with Linux as much as possible on my private machines. And at school, I had HPUX, the university. You never, because my compilers, C++ compilers, C++ and GCC were always free.
Yeah, so... Yes, actually, exactly at that time of this remote laboratory, I was already using Linux a lot.
Okay.
So typically, I was even quite often on this kind of a dual boot. But the point is about graphical programs. So again, the GCC, yes, and I was even using GCC. By the way, I was even also using a university HPUX. So that's 10.20 version. I still remember. Because I had to patch a lot of things there. But the thing is that there was always a problem, and even now it's not that funny. Okay, there is a much better, but writing user interfaces.
Yeah, you are right. Okay, user interface, I completely get it. So I will always stick with the server, but user interfaces, you're right. This is in Linux. It was not standard way to do this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like right now there is this Qt library that basically at least is usable, and some people are even really, let's say, satisfied with it. But at that time, there were a lot of beta free things, but nothing really sensible, even remotely close to the things that was Borland Builder Delphi or even Microsoft Visual offering.
Cool. So you wrote the nice Corba system for remote controlling your lab. And what happened then? So you then say, okay, Java is the best, right?
Actually, no. I was thinking, no one really. That is just a joke. That must really go away, and that's all. I would really at that time starting to do commercial stuff, and for me, doing any sensible commercial server was everybody would only use that for C++. Do that with C++. No one would use Java for that. When I was basically ending my university and I was looking for a job. And then I got accidentally a job offer, and that was the most, let's say, profitable out of few, and they're actually very easy to get. And that was in Java. And I said, okay, I don't really like the language, and I think it's completely horrible idea to write servers in Java, but I will give it a try. But it sounds funny today. That was a year 2000. And that was Java, it was like switch exactly at that moment. There was a switch from Java 1.2 to Java 1.3. Computers, I still remember my computer I get at my first job. It was like, I don't know, having 16 megabytes of RAM or something like that. Absolutely, not usable for Java and all that stuff. So I can only tell that at home I had always computers with way more memory to support Java programming. But nevertheless, that was like, at that time, Java was looking at it as a joke, especially compared to C++. If you, for no generics, do you remember how going through a vector was in Java 1.3?
Yeah, of course.
Enumeration, get element, next element is instance of string. Yeah, it's instance of string. Then
you were lucky. You were lucky. I started actually with Java before collections were in place. So the first question was, which collection library should we use? And the questions right now about frameworks or libraries, external libraries, were back then, which collection library should we choose? There were like 3 different commercial, and then the vector and the stuff came with Java, which basically killed the commercial libraries.
Yeah, okay. So I hated vector very, very quickly because exactly that was the switch to Java 1.3, and that was actually first time when there was a array list and stuff like that appearing, but my colleagues were stuck with vector, and that was like we are struggling.
Yeah, because I still find vectors and see vectors and hash tables during my code reviews. They are still very popular.
Yeah, I sometimes find them. Like this month, I was actually shocked when I've seen. Yeah, that was already last month because this was June. I found hash table in code, and it was like, why? What is even going on here? But okay, happens.
Cool. So, what you did in the first project? This was in around 2000. So, which server you built?
So basically, okay, that was like internet agency. The horrible things where people are building very simple, how to say it, or even content management systems.
Yeah.
And that was like when it comes to from business perspective, it was all very not really advanced stuff, and people do that right now in PHP. Which I would say PHP fits to that much better than the Java we used at that time. But we are doing that, and I was like basically fighting all the time with my colleagues, who most of them, because that wasn't really sophisticated. The first job I had, like a first year, wasn't commercial, wasn't really sophisticated company. All my colleagues were converted JavaScript developers. And at that time, JavaScript was even worse. Okay, that is a long story. I don't want to repeat that, but basically someone, I think, mixed what the JavaScript and Java is. And at that time, even I had doubts. What the hell is that? So I no wonder that HR.
Yeah,
it sounds funny, but at that time, really, I would be able as a boss to make this mistake.
Yeah.
So I realized that
you are exactly right. Why I'm laughing back then, because I had to do some JavaScript on the client, but back then it was really, you shouldn't admit that you know JavaScript, because JavaScript was like, admitting that you are like a Visual Basic programmer or some, programmer without having any clue. So JavaScript was the worst possible admission you could make in a commercial environment. Someone you are doing JavaScript, you are stupid. You have only ultra thin clients. There should be no logic on the client, and everything should be in Java on the server, right?
Yeah. So, but nevertheless, this first job was really that was really toxic from a programming point of view. I can only tell you that the moment I joined for instance, I've seen all the possible things. Like every project had incredible amounts of SQL injections, even on the login screen, because the code was mostly written in JSP, and there were even projects which only had JSP and not a single class. And even JSP is without any in-class. It means that all the functions you needed, they were copied all the time, and people were even afraid to reuse code of the colleagues because it's constantly changing and it will break. Of course, no tests. Back then, I even had no concept that I would be able to write tests during my normal work. So that wasn't a big surprise, but nevertheless, it shows what we are doing. And The best thing that I realized, my colleagues from, let's say, JavaScript world, when they were struggling with Java, they invented a couple of patterns, and it was impossible to convince them that they are not perfect patterns. like pattern were just basically hash type oriented programming, means that every function, every method always gets one argument, which is hash type, and this hash type contains everything, and you can put everything to that, like user, request, whatever you need later, even in a persistence layer. And basically all the methods were having one big input, which was hash type, like one argument. And then no one even needed any return, because if you wanted to return something, you could add it to this hash type and everyone would be happy. That was so awesome.
Yeah, but your JavaScript colleagues were better than my enterprise architects. In one project, they decided we need decoupling. So everything was an interface execute with object in and object out. And you have to implement the interface and provide a factory which creates implementation of the interface. The problem was, of course, in the implementation of the interface, you had exactly know what's going in and what's going out. So you had to hardcast everything. So nothing was actually replaceable. There was a tons of enterprise code which were completely pointless, and no one knew why they are doing this except one architect, and no one questioned that. And if I saw it, it's like, are you crazy? I mean, how you spend so much time writing code without any function? And they deleted it afterwards. But the pattern of JavaScript, at least hash tables. So I had just objects. So and this was a huge project created by enterprise consultants.
So I can only tell that I've seen this pattern, because that was the hash table oriented programming wasn't the only pattern. Exactly, I had this pattern. Exactly in this company, I've seen it. It was actually done by a little bit smarter guys, who had like two of them who had some better background. And that was exactly object-oriented programming, as I called it, because exactly you pass object, you get objects, and then you do like a big instance of, and you are done. Yeah, that was really
exactly
fun time.
Exactly. So there's like the bad patterns spreading all around the world. Okay,
actually,
cool.
I'm thinking about writing a big blog post about all those patterns because they are still slowly being forgotten. And after a year, I switched to the normal company when I started to do a normal work.
Was it in Poland still?
Yeah, well, it was in Poland, but I was working with a German customer from Mainz. Okay. So I was traveling to Mainz, and that was like, let's say, first quite normal job with everything in place. But nevertheless, I don't regret my first funny job because I learned there like everything, even if, and bad examples, but I learned.
Cool.
So
And the next job?
So that was like a normal, like at that time I accepted that probably the Java will not disappear. And if you do that with normal people, it's not that bad. Actually, and it's even, I became a Java advocate a little bit, let's say, among colleagues at that time, because people were having a lot of misconception, for instance, how that Java is interpreted language. You probably still remember that.
Yeah.
That Java is slow. And even though I was very skeptic about Java, I started to fight with that because, having this misconception doesn't really help you at all. So that's how I learned a lot about internals slowly. And yeah, that's, and then really, I guess. And by the way, we were working with something called JServe. Do you remember that?
Very good. Yeah, this was Apache Servlet Engine, right?
Yeah, that later a little bit like, that wasn't really replaced. Okay, it was replaced by Catalina Tomcat. Yeah. And I was also working for a brief moment with WebSphere 1. At that time it was just WebSphere, but nevertheless, that was horrible thing.
Yeah. You remember Jigsaw? This was the servlet container from Apache.
Jigsaw, yeah. Jigsaw, that's so...
Yeah, no. But JServe and Jigsaw, for unknown reasons, there were like two servlet engines and Apache and the JServe.
I only remember.
JServe, I think, was native, and
yes.
and Jigsaw was more or less half Java. So I actually tested both, but then Java Web Server came out from Sun, so I stick with it. And for unknown reasons, the WebSphere 1 was announced in Germany in Cebit, so I worked there. and it looked exactly the same like Java Web Server. So it appeared to me like IBM licensed the Java Web Server the very first time, and they just rebranded it, they changed the color and sold it with 10x price. So really, so I remember the first version of web server was like 5K Deutschmarks exactly, and the Java web server was $400 or something like this because I bought it. That was the first installation, I think, even in Germany. So cool. So you did some JServe work, cool. And what was it? CMS again?
No. This time that was okay. That is a complex story. That's okay. You are asking about JServe or the next thing?
The next thing. Then what you
okay,
built?
After JServe we were using in this company, and then I even convinced company, this first funny to move to Catalina actually, and all that stuff. So we were ending, that was Catalina 3. I still remember a lot of bugs, but at least behaving better than JServe. And then I switched to other company, and then that's actually the company where we're having Resin. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Resin. Yeah.
Resin was one of the best. Coucho Resin was one of the best application server I knew. So Reza Rahman started at the company Resin, and this was like alien because they were really fast, very thin, and they were straight to the point.
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed. And so that was actually at that time already it was like quite well standardized. So you could actually, when it comes to web server, you could switch from one to another with not a big pain. Yeah. So switching to Resin was absolutely no pain, and I really admired that it was so quick. So it was really nice. But the company was doing, let's say, some stuff for banking systems that was like connection between ERP system, banking systems, and Wohnungsunternehmen.
Okay.
So housing companies. But nevertheless, that was like a B2B kind of application where people like invoicing others and ordering some stuff, then making invoices, and then they were getting money automatically, like all that stuff. And basically that was like a front end for ERP and banking systems in Java.
When was it? Which year?
Oh, that was like from 2002, I think. And actually I spent in this company a lot of years till 2008, I think, where we basically were doing more and more stuff on some systems and replacing this web with finally Java EJB3. I still remember this slow switch, but we are gradually rewriting the code to EJB3. And I was like one of the biggest advocates why we should do that, why we should, for instance, replace persistence layer written on, I still remember Toplink, and then we had some handwritten JDBCs that I proposed to rewrite to Hibernate, and we did that. So that was like, but that was like a huge software composed of something that people right now would call monolith, but it wasn't a monolith at all, because it was like one big piece of software composed of like more like Frankenstein's monster,
yes,
composed of completely different pieces of code that do not fit to each other, written by different teams, in different technologies, and only accidentally, composed to one web application, and later to, I think, JBoss application. I don't remember. That was probably JBoss. I was like big fan of JBoss that time. But we were doing also other stuff with WebLogic, and so this company was doing some interesting system for me. That was a great school of writing enterprise in non-toxic. Actually, that was really important in non-toxic environment.
Was it in Poland?
Yeah, it was still in Poland, but I mostly worked with exactly Mainz and sometimes with Munich, so with German.
Okay, which companies were it? Can you tell which companies were it? So just names?
I can tell, I think, because I cannot say bad words about those companies. They still exist. So one was Marion, which is associated with Areal Bank.
Okay.
And second was a Conject, I think still they exist. It's in Munich, and this is, and they were doing like B2B stuff.
Okay, cool.
Project.
Okay, what happened then after 2008?
Oh, then I switched. That was I switched job because we had some problems in this company, in a Polish department only. We tried to be independent, but it basically failed. And I was looking slowly for a job, and I get this offer that everyone would do that. Someone needed to write a game, and I decided, oh my God, I wanted to write a game. lot of times, and let's do that. And so for a brief moment, I was writing a game, 3D game in Java with
Cool.
JMonkey engine.
Wow.
and the J was and the J was on the back end. And the game, I can even still try it, but basically that was like connected to some advertisement campaign to some big company, and that was exactly the year of crisis. So they stopped everything. We ended having a game, but basically no customer because it was written for just one action. Well, it wasn't a very even complex game, just something simple. But it was a good school of programming. And then we were doing some other stuff. But basically, because we had a lot of access to graphic designers, we slowly started to do cartoons in this company, and decided I wanted to be a software developer, not having a company writing videos, making videos and stuff like that. Only sometimes supporting other video games companies doing some models. So I switched job and I joined Capgemini actually quickly. So
Hey.
it was like 2000.
Interesting. So you work for Capgemini. I never knew it.
So I worked. Actually, I still have good connections to Capgemini. It's like so. Yeah, simply I worked in Poland, but I worked with Frankfurt, like Offenbach and Munich department. So it was like
Okay.
I spent there like 3 years.
I had a good fight with Capgemini architects, so still fighting right now. But they are
I had a really, legendary fight.
yeah. This is like in one project I really like interfaces for no reasons, and I try to remove them, and they escalate everything. Like Adam Bean thinks monolithically, he hates interfaces, and I write back. So now I have some fights. So this is actually interesting.
I do remember watching your talk. I think that was like, I don't know, 33rd degree or something about that. Who needs those interfaces? At that time, I was working for Capgemini, and few of my colleagues were watching that, and that was very convincing one. That was like opening eyes. So probably you are at that time exactly fighting with that. So that really helped us in this fight against, let's say, over engineering.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So okay. So now Capgemini. Are you still at Capgemini? No. So
No. I moved to Switzerland mostly I like the company, even though, because, there are some architects like in every big company, but incredible amount of good people, even very good architects that you can learn from. And actually I still having a good contacts and I like those people. But for family reasons and stuff like that, I decided basically to move to Switzerland. Actually, I wanted to go to Italy, but it didn't work. So to Switzerland, and right now I'm still here working for, like, I work for a company called Ingenious right now. But that actually makes me kind of a freelancer, almost. So basically I do stuff for other customers. We are just having umbrella for contracts and everything.
So you are like basically consultant, right? So to sum everything, so you started, with the JServe, Apache, and Jigsaw. They want the enterprise route, spend some time in project, consulting with Capgemini, and now you are in Switzerland and Ingenious, and you are working as a firefighter consultant for different companies, right?
How do you know that firefighter? Well, yes.
No, I just, from your background experience, I would assume that you are doing this as well.
Okay, I'm not always firefighting, but actually that's first something I like, and that actually happens.
Yeah, exactly. So. This is what I like, and I do it also a lot. But why we are talking is, I noticed you in several of my talks, and why I noticed you, because I actually delivered some talks about microservices, and you ask during my talks, because I like questions, smart questions, but they are like nice questions and smart, and I answer the questions, and you say, okay, I get it, and you are happy, and I saw you over and over again. And what I remember, T-shirt, NoSQL, right? Or database with NoSQL.
Drop database.
Drop database, exactly. This, why I remember you. And you looked for me like a knight. So you had something from leather, right? So you're a big guy. So you really, and like Matrix or Knight or something. Now I would like to ask you a personal question. Why is your look and feel that? So why the knight look and feel, or whatever you call it, or...
Knight, not really. I like rather call myself like the outfit I'm using for in my few of my talks is more like a wizard. But basically, if
Wizard,
there
yeah,
is no
exactly. Wizard as well.
wizard, yeah, yeah.
Why knight?
But
Because you're a big guy, You're a big guy, long hair.
I'm not really that. Okay, I'm not. I'm big, in the size of wide, but not tall.
Okay.
But nevertheless, it's like I'm actually, that's the thing I decided to do to be. I just tell you honestly to be recognizable, so that people remember me, and that works really.
Yeah.
People are asking who was that in this how cape of a wizard with his hood, and that was me. And they sometimes even I can tell you they told me they invited me to conference because some people asked that they wanted a wizard. No matter what's actually he
Oh,
is
cool.
talking.
Then I should start, with a dwarf.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, come on. Rock stars use that for years. Like they have a special style, and I decided it's exactly why not we, like developer advocates, like people, we want to be recognized by something. So choose something that fits you and do it because it's like additional, fun. For me, it's also a lot of fun. And basically, I also dress like that to work sometimes. So it's additional fun, especially when you work in some bank or whatever. And, they have this crazy outfits.
Yeah. But yeah, this is cool. Hack the system. Exactly. With your outfit in a bank, it will perfect.
Yeah, one day I heard really lady screaming because I was leaving the office very late and I was one of the, already everything was darkened and I was in my hood and then a lady appeared on the end of the corridor, seen me, and that was like a big scream. But then she started laughing, so it was not that bad.
Yeah. Cool. And you were for me a big mystery because I assumed your outfit indicates like some connections to black metal or whatever, but your t-shirts, like if you were black metal, usually I would expect some kind of t-shirt with skulls and demons or whatever, but there are no demons in place, and you were too nice for a black cult. It's like you are really. I have to ask you about that. Why? So nice guy, it looks like, and I never saw you standing because you always sit. I was the speaker, and you asked me questions. And you sit there, and from a civics perspective, you look to me like a huge guy. This is why I'm asking you there. So and
maybe
yeah,
maybe I was standing, but you assumed I was sitting.
But nevertheless, this was really we had nice conversations, and one time you said to me, what about not using Java E? And I say, okay, I mean, for me, it's the simplest possible thing. If I will not use Java E, what I was then? And you told me nothing. You can just go with Java SE. And this is, of course, what I really would like to do is to drop all the frameworks, regardless this is Java E or whatever, and just go with Java SE. So okay. I remember we had the chat with, you say injection. I don't like injection. No one knows what's going on with the inject. And you say, okay, what is the alternative? And you said you can do it easily with Java. So now, if you can, what was your concept getting rid of all the frameworks, Java E and whatever, and just replacing them with nothing? So what was the idea behind it? I had no time, to have deeper conversation with you back then. So,
okay.
Yeah.
But okay, first, I think there's misunderstanding because you took my point a little bit too far. So I don't say just plain Java SE, but I say nothing special for injections. Basically, I'm actually using this concept for a couple of years right now. I don't need anything special for injections. I don't need any container injections. What I'm using is dependency injection, and Java already has a, let's say, perfect thing of let's say, construct for that. Like every object-oriented programming language has that. This is a constructor. It really works always. And but that's it simply. And I even like yesterday I had a talk about it. Why that? Because first is why would you need this big machinery for solving a simple problem that can be actually solved without it? And second, this machinery doesn't work well. That's the biggest problem. If this machinery was working well, like Java E, CDI, EJB, CDI, even Spring, I would have no big problem with that. But they fail a lot. And they actually, when I'm helping companies, I see a lot of problems. And Now I can tell you, I know how this machinery works. For me, it's not a big mystery. I sometimes do not know what the program will do, but mostly it's not about dependency injection, which is mostly with aspects where there are like crazy things sometimes happening. But nevertheless, it's just rarely, but mostly I can quickly find out what's going on. Mysteries happen not as often, but as I see, people completely don't understand that. Like, let's say, even people that like Spring or like Java EE, they seem to be advocating for that. My experience is that most of them have absolutely no clue how it works, and they fall into a traps. And for years, I was thinking the reason to solve that is to educate them. I was really proposing books. If you use that, like JSF, that was like the most horrible thing I know in this world. Like, read this book and you will not be doing these stupid mistakes anymore. But then I realized it's futile. I basically learned couple of people that are reading the books, including myself and you, I assume, from your talks. You are reading, but regular developers just do a lot of try and errors. And after that, what happens in this program is that they are just working accidentally. You move 2 lines and everything falls apart. And
exactly.
Then
you are right. No one reads. This is also for unknown reasons. This is just, and sometimes I've write, 5 pages tutorial about something for a commercial company, and happens no one reads that. So you are absolutely right. So this is actually striking because I really like to read books and blog posts and whatever, and I learned a lot from everywhere, actually, always. So you always a small thing, where you can say, this is actually a good idea. But if we are not reading and just copying, then I always say no, and as you said, how to call it, a bad feeling that it works somehow, but I have no idea how, and usually it means trouble in long term. So I'm with you on that.
By the way, probably you are the same guy as me. Like, if you having something doesn't work mysteriously, and then you swap the lines and it start to work, do you leave it like that? Because maybe you do the commit and push to server because that fixes like big productive issue. But after that, I spend a day or two till I find out this is because there is in this specification, this line, which exactly explains why it happened. I don't like to have like mysteries in the past because they will come back anyhow. But people are not doing that. They're just, it started to work. Great. Why going deeper? Just push into production. Don't worry. Problem solved. Yeah, that's basically my idea is how people work with frameworks like Java EE and Spring, where a lot of things actually, they are like 99% of things that, 95, let's say, everything can be explained and is explained in documentation. 5% are, let's say, sometimes bugs in a version of server or something like that. It happens. There are, especially, for instance, some JPA implementations are really buggy. And there are like, I don't know, but there is not much mysteries. But for people, there are a lot of them because they don't go to the documentation and just they're happily doing try and error. And then there is a mess that sometimes I have to clean.
Yeah. But I think these people don't like programming.
No, that's the problem, because some of them, that's the biggest thing. Some of them are proud of being hackers. Some of them have like 15 years of experience, even more. And then I don't even know what to think about. And some of them are really productive. The only problem is that, they are productive, but they leave, ashes behind. But the thing works in production for some time.
Yeah. So I have similar experience to yours. And the problem is consultants like us, sometimes external consultants. So I assuming you are not doing this, so you are, I would say, similar age to mine, because assuming you're C64 and ZX Spectre and so forth. But what I see a lot is like external consultant, comes in to a Java EE project and shows off, and tries to use as many annotations and Java EE concept as possible without any relation to the business logic. So what they are leaving is like 500,000 annotations and one class which talks to a database. And if I see this, I mean, what is going on? I really don't get it. So, I mean, because, this is like complete over-engineering. It's not over-engineering, it's complete cargo cult. And Yeah, and there's actually nothing behind. And in my projects, if I have the power, to decide, you would be only allowed to use add inject without private field and nothing else. No qualifiers, no alternatives, no defaults, nothing, because you don't need them in usual project. And then my approach is very similar to yours, except I write a little bit less code because I don't have the constructors. If I have, three fields, I have three times add inject and no constructor. I actually prohibit constructors. Really, last week I delivered. We both in one project. It would be a huge mess, I guess. So I let them delete all the constructors because there's too much code. Just go with add inject, and then unit test if the injection is not private, like rather than package private. I let to inject the fields directly. You know what I mean? Because the unit test and the production class are in the same package, you can easily mock out whatever you like.
Okay. The thing is, my question, do you have the post construct sometimes?
Sometimes, but in the rare cases. In business...
This is, for me, post construct is the most insane annotation. Okay, no, it's not the most insane, but one of the most, because what does it say? We have a constructor which doesn't really construct. Because one of the things, let's say, behavior of a good API is that if you have a method that's public, that's accessible for you, doesn't have to be public, can be packaged, but it's accessible, you can basically call it. Mm-hmm. But if you have a post construct, it means that you have some constructor, which in this case mostly is the default one. And after this construction, you have object that it's not really usable. It's usable only if the post contract will work. And basically, by the way, the most crazy things I've found so far were mostly in post construct, because the state of the object there is quite crazy when you look at sometimes I would say even it's not very specified, but you think what's already injected, what's the state of other beans, what can you assume there? I see a lot of people actually swapping those lines and were fighting exactly in post construct. But for me,
post construct means actually that that everything which can be injected has to be injected, otherwise it wouldn't be called. So this works pretty well.
Yeah, but I don't really remember right now the Rust case when I've seen post construct, but I do remember. But I was trying to find out what was the author doing of this code, and exactly that's not mystery. He didn't know what he was doing. But even I having some experience, had problems to understand what is the state in this moment. But I don't really remember right now the exact case. It was some time ago. I haven't, so I wouldn't recall that. But it's really not that clean. Of course, everything is injected, but there is I don't really remember the real problem right now. But that was appearing. But nevertheless, for me, the biggest problem is that I completely don't understand the whole concept. Okay, I understand the concept of inject, but I don't really see it's saving a work. I see it's really making a lot of problems. Actually, you mostly with the second thing, with aspects. But basically, for me, I having this code, and I already rewritten a couple of systems. But by the way, not from no Java EE to absolutely no Java EE, or not from Spring to absolutely, okay, the second thing happened, but from Spring to absolutely no Spring at all. But what I did, and actually that wasn't even my idea, was cleaning the system so that you have these injections only on the facade level, like controller, JAX RS controllers. They are called by the server, but everything that starts from there, you even inject persistence controller to the persistence context, entity manager to the controller, but you don't use it there, but you only get access from the server. And then everything that happens behind is written in a completely separate project, but doesn't even touch Java EE at all. It's just it's accessing actually entity manager or hibernate session or something like that. And of course, a lot of stuff, it has layers like services, all that stuff, but it's all written without inject, without aspects. If you have a transaction, you have a special for that call doing transaction and stuff like that. And what was the outcome of that? These codes, these projects were incredibly well testable, because the part that has to be tested, this clean part, we could really start it, do a test with real database quickly without any problem. And that was way quicker than, for instance, doing with something with Archillion or I don't know,
No,
starting Spring.
Archillion is not needed in most projects. So I do almost the same what you are doing with injection. So this is the funny thing. It's not like what you are saying. I'm absolutely with you. So I do exactly the same code, but we don't have constructors, and we in rare cases we only have post construct. This is really rare, because the most developers don't even know that it exists. So in my project, it's not even post-construct. And the entity manager is injected with persistence context. But in unit tests, we do persistence, create entity manager, factory, create entity manager, and we fetch another one and just set it. So this is, I never use Archillion because it's too complex. And we don't use...
slow.
Yeah, it's slow and complex, and it does tests the application server, which I don't care about. I would like to test my code, so this is completely out of scope. So what you are saying is absolutely right. So what's funny is you have, similar mission to mine with complete different tools and techniques. This is the interesting part.
Yeah, but the point is, I can tell you where, for instance, what's the problem with this. Okay, I just say inject is for me, and dependency injection with a container is something that I don't see I need. Even there are like great talks from Tamar Gabel. For instance, last year he was like slaying sacred cows and inversion of control dependency injection. There is such talks. I can recommend you because he's talking, basically has same observation. Who would even need that? But I don't know. I want to go into the details of that. This is like I wouldn't be able, I wouldn't even try to convince anyone for that quickly in one talk. I just, because dependency injection is just, some people think they need it, some people just learn it as a cargo cult and everything. But the real problem are aspects, because mostly when you are injecting, because you are expecting that you inject something which is a bean, which has all those aspects connected to them, like transactional, like security, and stuff like that. And the point is that, and maybe I'm very unlucky, but in a lot of projects that I was joining, that I was trying to recover or analyze or even add feature, I realized that there are like big problems with this annotations and context. Like, for instance, transactional is my like favorite one. Like 2 years ago, I found a project in a bank that was 1.5 years on production, where transactional wasn't working at all.
Because they use
so
this?
Everything, reason of that, it's really crazy, but it's great. That was like a mystery. By the way, because I was adding a feature with some, stupid mutex on database because we didn't have access to anything else. And that was a project in Spring. But the project first was expected to be delivered on WebSphere. But the team didn't want WebSphere, so they prepared for Tomcat, and they got some like promise that one day they will be able to switch to Tomcat. So they did everything in Spring. You can do that. Mm-hmm. You can do Spring as a web application deploy on WebSphere just as a web application. It works. But for that, they used CDI annotations, which, has this inject, has as well transactional from CDI. And if you look to the specification of Spring, they clearly say they support CDI. Of course they support, so transactional would work. But there is one catch to it. So if you deploy to WebSphere, that was the original thing, you shouldn't deploy CDI API jar, which has this transactional, because it would conflict with WebSphere, of course. So you cannot with your var, with your war application, you cannot deploy this jar, because as you cannot deploy servlet API or whatever. Yeah. You understand?
Yeah, of course.
So for WebSphere that was okay, but when they switched to Tomcat, they still didn't have this jar. The point is Tomcat doesn't have it either. So in Tomcat, so what was happening? The application was compiling. By the way, it had tons of tests. Tests were green. And that was starting on Tomcat, but Tomcat didn't have this jar with transactional. And you know what JVM does? When it loads class, which has annotation, which is not accessible because class is not found. This was something that I've completely forgotten. And I learned it a year ago, 2 years ago. Actually, JVM in specification says you just skip that. If it's annotation, even if it's runtime annotation, you just silently ignore that. So the classes from the JVM perspective were loaded with no annotation at all. That was actually something finally I found during debugging. It's like I'm looking at the method. Why the transactional context is not started? And I see, the method, if I go in reflection to annotations, has nothing. How can that be? And then there's JVM spec says, if it's annotation, you don't get an error. But by the way, I would expect that. It's just ignored. Funny coincidence.
I would also expect that, I have to say. I'm actually surprised because...
I was surprised. But, at the moment, annotations were 2005, when they were proposed, when the Java 5 came. This was actually part of advocating for annotations, that if it's something, it's not there, then you don't get error, in comment.
Yeah.
So it was, and then we've completely forgotten about it. But coincidences afterwards, there was an application, 18 months, exactly, I think at this moment, 18 months almost on production with everything on auto commit, which is wow. Yeah. Basically, they had a lot of luck because
but what you learned is actually your development environment should be not that different from production environment. This was the problem.
But that, by the way, now at that time everything was Tomcat and everything was switched. So there was a Tomcat there and Tomcat on production, Tomcat on development.
Okay.
So the problem is that's how to avoid this problem. Actually, it's very hard because how to test that? It's almost impossible. What I'm doing, for instance,
Jarek, you are absolutely right. What I'm hearing here, they wanted to have, dependency injection from CDI without having Java EE, and they used Tomcat to have a similar experience to Java EE without having Java EE. So it means they spent too much time fighting with the infrastructure and just not focusing on the business logic,
I wouldn't say that because, come on, they used just Spring. So it's basically, if you have Spring, you have this dependency injection starting with, day zero exactly as in Java EE. Absolutely no difference here.
Yeah, but they use CDI dependency injection, right?
Yeah, it's supported by Spring.
Yeah,
no problem.
Why they didn't use, the Spring dependency injection?
Slowly. They are mixing, but they wanted right now they use CDI because for a moment there was it actually didn't happen. They were expecting that there might be that they will be going on a WebSphere, but that was political thing. And before they were,
I got it. Okay.
This project was started a couple of years ago, but by the moment it went to production already, the bank allowed Tomcat, simple like that.
Okay.
So it actually on production it was always with Tomcat, but the team was doing actually in my eyes the correct thing. They were preparing for both possibilities that maybe they will be allowed to go with WebSphere or maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
In such case, you basically want to do something that works on both, so you go with CDI, or it's actually because they expected also that they might be forced to go with Java EE stuff but it's you never know. That was a company joining first time doing something as external company for bank, and they were didn't know what will be allowed.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
that's political thing. But come on, exactly for that CDI was created to unify both worlds.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's even more when actually I have a list when transactional cannot work. The most funny for me is that when you call transactional method annotation, especially it happens often with requires new from the same bin, the self-call problem.
Yeah, this
the
doesn't
dynamic
work.
proxy magic. And this is how many people know how dynamic proxy works? I know how dynamic proxy works. And that I can fall as well into this trap because from time to time I'm just refactoring and I just don't see that it's now happening. I joined methods from two classes into one, and right now I have self-call that I'm not aware of. And then, this is a really big problem with all that magic because this is leaking abstraction. So you expect it works, but it actually doesn't. And in order to make it work, you have to know how it works internally and be careful. Your code becomes slowly like a minefield, which is something that should only happen in PHP and JavaScript, that every line of code can be dangerous. But in fact, unfortunately, it happens also this Java EE Spring applications where I even seen funny things like private method because someone decided that the method will be private, but it had annotations and no one noticed that, oh, from this moment it will not work.
Yeah.
Or some.
So you are right. You're right. So what happens recently to me, we had like, jacks arrays which were facades, and they were not annotated at all. For unknown reasons, they annotated, the next level completely. So they liked EJB, so I don't know why. So all the classes were at stateless. So what it basically meant, exactly as your project, every public method started and committed a transaction, which basically meant auto-commit, as in your case. So I had exactly the case recently. But what I did is I put, stateless on facade and deleted all the other stateless, and this was like a small task. But what would be fun, I would say, you have already prepared talk. If you like, one day, I don't know, in autumn or next year, we could deliver a talk both. You could show first what doesn't work, and I try to defend, Java EE with my code on the fly. This could be fun if you like somewhere. I don't care where the.
Okay, maybe a conference. Okay, but there's like actually.
This could be fun because.
I actually have some invitation to some conferences we can do. Like where I basically can deliver any talk, but I can use one of those spots for exactly in Atom so we can discuss it.
Or it could be Java user group somewhere who is reachable by plane. Right now I'm completely overworked, but this should be fun. So because everyone will get something out of that. So at the end they would at least understand a little bit dynamic proxy and dependency injection, that they can decide whether they drop away everything, which would be my favor. So if I can, I would just go with Java SE or at the least possible amount of frameworks, You know what I mean? So we can still use a servlet container, whatever. But
just one thing, because I have like complete, let's say, alternatives. Maybe you've heard Ratpack, or even I'm using something like recently mostly, which is called Spring Web Flux. Basically, this is the functional web for which is a functional part of Spring, which lets me to do any web without any magic. So any class path scanning, which is already also way faster. This is like alternative stack, but it means I'm not using anything. I'm not using just plain Java SE when I'm doing servers. But I'm using small libraries or tools which basically let me do REST. Let's say REST mapping to my methods. But apart from that, I'm using persistent libraries, like for instance, JOQ, which you surely know, which basically lets me do persistence. But again, I use them mostly as a library because I'm in control. In fact, they never do any scanning on my class. I don't have to inherit from anything, and they absolutely do not do not involve any changes in do not constrain my architecture at all. Because basically I'm always calling you, and you are basically the most, let's say, sharing when this is come closer to frameworks. Basically, I tell you, Spring Web Flux, that you will call that whenever someone asks for hello, you should have called this function, and I passed you this function. But this is already way better than, for instance, class path scanning, servlet, or whatever way. Basically, in one point I have to put something with default constructor, because, for instance, for me, it never happens right now that I have default constructors in such cases, because I am always injecting something, like injecting database persistence or something like that. But this is like, we can show this, or we can actually maybe constrain this to some more exact area, maybe, because this is the wide thing.
But this could work. So what you could do, just what you don't like is the dependency injection part. So we both know, the corner cases where it can be problematic. So, and we can just cover you on this, what doesn't work from your perspective the most. And I would just show with running code why it doesn't work or what can happen, and you can just proceed. And I will show some codes at the end. The audience will learn a little bit about Java EE and about your approach. I think this would be just win-win. It could be fun, actually. I never delivered talk with someone else, but with you it could work, because you can say whatever you like, and I will code a little bit, and then we are done, right?
By the way, I can tell you there is one thing one exactly thing for which I would like to have dependency injection, because it actually makes my code longer. I can really show you the codes with dependency. Okay, dependency injection I'm using, but I'm not using container for that. But there's one thing that I wish container. There's one bin that I'm constantly injecting in many of my classes, like bin, a class in my case, but I'm injecting and I have to right now pass it through all the layers.
Principal?
No, time.
Time, okay.
Because everything, okay, in the serious system, you have to in order to make it testable, you have to pass the time somehow.
Yeah.
And I want to make it without any hacks that I have like static time somewhere, like fixed clock somewhere. I want to pass a clock as a dependency. And sometimes it happens in some system that I am passing this clock all the way down and up. And this is like, oh, that's the thing I would wish I had dependency injection for. However, by the way, in Scala, they solved this problem. So for parameters that you are passing, but you don't care that much and you don't want to see it actually in your API, you don't want to see it in your code mostly. You want to see that they are there. They have this infamous implicit. But by the way, I would call this implicit in Scala is still way better than injections by the container, but that's a different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to summarize, what you don't like inversion of control. You don't like the fact that the container controls you. You would like to be in control, right?
I don't like the fact that it constrains. You're right, but the reason for that actually is that it constrains my architecture and that it is dangerous, that it is leaking. So I have to be careful way more than I want at my age. I want to, code without fear that, small change by me or by my colleagues is breaking like important business restrictions like security or transactions or things like that.
Yeah.
And the problem affects Spring and Java exactly. That's because of the same reason, because dynamic proxy has its problems.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Now, where people can find you on the internet? Do you have a blog or Twitter or GitHub?
Yeah, I have a Twitter, Jarek, and then 6 zeros.
Wow.
It's for the black collar. I don't know, that's the story, Jarek. And that's exact, but I don't tweet that much. Unfortunately, I don't really have nothing that a real blog. I'm actually blogging, but it's called microblog and it's only in Polish. It's part of a 4programmers.net page, so the 4programmers net page. Mm-hmm. There is one like Polish forum for message board for programmers, and I am regularly posting there something, but actually only in Polish. That's the thing.
Okay.
So, yeah. But of course, I'm very active on conferences. I'm a conference guy, so you will find me sooner or later there.
Cool. So send me the links if you can per email, so I will put them to show notes. And in one, I don't know whether we managed to do this year, but we can do even Java user group somewhere, which is reachable from Munich per airplane. Could be in Poland, is perfect. Like, Danzig, Krakow works well, Warsaw would work, or in Switzerland would also work. So, or a conference, whatever. So we can submit something and let's see. Yeah.
Okay. So let's do that. Actually, I like fun stuff, but so far I also never managed to do a talk with someone else. I actually already tried, but it's like, when two busy people try to do a talk, it's always like something together. It's always a little bit disaster. But finally, for instance, for me, it happened that I was doing a talk alone, and that was a good talk. But because other guy actually helped me a lot in preparing that. So
I hate preparation. So with no preparation, what we should just do, just agree on dependency injection, and you will show something, and I will try, before we have the list. So you will say, okay, dependency injection aspects and so forth. And I could say something. So it could be spontaneous conversation like now. This works the best. A preparation is too...
I don't know. I liked actually to show the code. So
yeah, you can.
I have this...
You can show the code. I will write the code. So
maybe, because that's for me. I like to do something on the real stuff. Why can we just, let's say, invent a small idea, like kind of service or a game? I actually like games, and do them with Java EE and in a let's say my way, with probably with Spring Web Flags, which shouldn't be called Spring at all, but and functional approach. That would be something.
Yeah,
And
but
by the
no time for preparation, so this will already die right now.
oh,
But we should
because this is
keep in mind. So just keep in mind if you have something, I would
okay.
just come in. We can discuss like that, or
Okay.
But thank you, and I would like to invite you once more so we can talk more deeply. So now without introduction, so just about the concept. So why not next year or something? Invite you back if you enjoyed that. I would really enjoy to have you back here.
So I did enjoy that, but for instance, I would propose that maybe next time with a little bit of code. I don't know, because you are doing podcasts, but for me it's like I like to present code. I like to present the ideas that people can compile, and so that would be for me. Maybe I can write a blog post and then we can do it for that. I don't know, something like to refer to something real.
Yeah. So thank you.
Okay.
And
Okay,
enjoy the nice weather in Switzerland, I guess.
Okay, yeah, it's perfect. I don't know how it's in your place. In Munich.
Munich is really hot.
Oh, so enjoy as well.
Okay, bye.
Bye.